Hello, hello. I hope everyone's doing well. We're going to jump right into it today. Got some big news on Baidu and Roku based on yesterday's market data from ARK Invest. So I'm going to wait a few minutes just because I see people are still piling in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Feel free to comment below. Let me know if there are any initial questions. I'll throw up some banners in the meantime. Nothing in this episode is financial advice of any kind. I'm simply looking at ARK Invest's market data day by day to see if we can snoop out interesting buy and sell signals, especially while the market is highly volatile, right? Because that's when they're going to be trading the most around price action, which is super interesting to me, right? Which companies are they most confident in? Which companies are they least confident in, or which ones are they using as cash positions, in my opinion, based on the data, right? Lots of people watching Tesla this morning. That's great. For sure, there are some very interesting other companies near the top of the list that I want to bring to your attention today. So just as a preview, while we're waiting for people to continue to pile in, I will show you the dashboard today. I have made some big changes that I hope you like. First of all, the dashboard now takes up the whole screen. So that's going to be a big benefit, I think. Let me answer this question. I stream on 2 different YouTube channels for one reason. Right now, people aren't used to going to Ticker Symbol Live yet. So this is a good reminder. Go subscribe to Ticker Symbol Live. I am going to stop streaming this on Ticker Symbol U in short order, right? So I'm going to probably do this for about a week, and then you will only be able to get these on Ticker Symbol Live. So go down to the channel scrolling by below and subscribe to Ticker Symbol Live. There's a lot of interesting other trades going on, so I'm going to just jump right into it. The first thing I'll say is I tuned up the dashboard a bit so that it should hopefully look better on mobile. I know a lot of people made comments about the visibility on mobile, so I hope you can see it even better now. So let me do something like that and like that. And now it should be a little clearer on mobile. I have the table ordered right now in the number of by the ARK rank, right? So this table is ordered by ARK's biggest positions. Number 1 is Tesla. Number 2 is Teladoc, Square, and then something interesting has happened, right? ARK bought the dip on Roku. So we're going to spend some time talking about Roku today. And then ARK has made a trade on Baidu. Baidu fell a lot yesterday. Baidu fell by almost 11%, if not a little more yesterday. And ARK only sold 3% of it. What that means is they actually, aren't trading around Baidu's price action, right? They sold a little bit to buy other stocks, but they're holding their position in spite of that dip. So the first thing I want to bring up is Roku, right? Let's go back to this. Maybe even that. Roku is ARK's 4th biggest holding overall. Right, it fell 7.5% between the last 2 trading days, right? And ARK bought that dip, right? It's now ARK's 4th biggest position overall, and it sits in ARK K and ARK W, right? It's a big position in both of those funds. In fact, in ARK W, if I delete all this and I just look at ARK W, Roku is number 5 in ARK W, right? So Tesla, Bitcoin, Square, Teladoc, and Roku. And then overall, Roku is, again, their 4th biggest position, right? So the first question I want to ask, which we'll get back to after we finish with the dashboard, the first question we'll ask about Roku is, what is so special about Roku? Just calling this out, the name of the platform I'm using is Tableau. I built these dashboards myself to facilitate discussions around ARK's buys and sells each day, right? So this is Tableau. The second thing we'll talk about is Baidu. Baidu is this red bar here. So Baidu is their 7th biggest position, right? It was 5th 2 days ago. It's now their 7th. So it used to be where Shopify is now in their overall portfolio. They hold almost $750 million, $750 million in Baidu, right? So they sold 3.5% of their position yesterday, but it dropped by 11%. So the other thing we'll talk about today is what the heck is Baidu, right? So we're going to start forming discussions around ARK Invest's highest conviction holdings. And we're going to start understanding these stocks one by one using these data to drive discussion, right? Before I quickly switch to talking about Baidu and Roku, I'm just going to point out the stocks that they sold to make this happen, right? So the other thing we can do is we can sort this by the number of shares lost in a position day to day, right? And we can see that they sold a lot of the following stocks, right? They sold Lightspeed, Google, Facebook, Netflix, Taiwan Semiconductor, and then, it starts becoming not that interesting. PayPal, Amazon, Regeneron, Baidu is on this list. So the thing to note is the companies that they're selling the most are these big, well understood, well-known tech names: Google, Facebook, Netflix, Taiwan Semiconductor. Why don't I make this bigger so you can read it? Sorry about that. So Google, Netflix, Facebook, Taiwan Semiconductor, and PayPal are the stocks that they're selling while the market is dipping, right? PayPal, Amazon, Baidu, Regeneron, these are all big, big names, right? The stocks that they're buying, we can flip this list and ask the same question. Which ones increased in shares? So very quickly, Sear, we talked about yesterday. DraftKings, JD.com, another big stock in ARKW, right? C Limited, Butterfly, Schrodinger, down and down the list. So we can look and we can see that a lot of these stocks are going to be in ARKW and ARKG, right? But the most interesting ones to me today that I want to focus on, again, are if we actually sort by ARK rank, we can see, we can see two outliers here, right? You can see that overall red days for all of their stocks. So this new heat map down here, all it's showing you is their buys and sells, right? In terms of percent share changes, right? So overall outflows, like people in the comments are saying, and you can kind of see that just based on most of these squares being red. They have sold shares in most of their positions, right? So they bought in Roku. That's interesting. Even on a red day, they're buying. On an outflow day, they're buying. And Baidu. Baidu fell by a lot more than they sold out. So those are the two we're going to cover today. So I'm going to quickly stop for comments, make sure I see what's going on. Lots of people saying stuff like, I still have cash, but I'm afraid to spend it. That's a safe, happy place to be, right? Like, it's good that you're concerned about spending your cash position. You should be concerned about spending your cash position. And the answer to that is slowly average in. Do not, and let me throw this up here real quick, right? In my opinion, don't spend it all in one place. Go watch the market a little bit. When you see a price you like, spend a couple % of your cash, reassess, don't worry about doing it all at once, right? You don't need to catch a falling knife. You just want to be in a place to spend money on good deals. So I love comments like this. I think this is totally appropriate as well. Stalking Kathy Wood was a fool's errand for me. It could be a fool's errand. I don't think it is, because I'm using this as part of a larger framework to drive, my investment thesis based on a vision, and then looking at the market and how my vision is playing out. And that's what we're going to talk about now. So let's flip to talking about Roku. Going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to share my browser. I believe it's this one. Okay, so what's Roku's deal, right? Why is Roku so interesting? Roku is like an Amazon Fire Stick, kind of, right? Like everyone kind of gets this idea of, you plug Roku into your TV. it offers you channels and streaming services, and then it like advertises like everything else, right? So the special thing about Roku is they are dominant in the ad market share space, right? So when they serve ads, they get a lot more clicks and a lot more people not leaving, whatever they were streaming when they see ads. So Roku has some special sauce about matching people to content and people to ads. That is why there's such a big position in ARK, right? In ARK W and ARK K. And that boils down to two things. So Roku, I know this is probably a little hard to see, so I'm going to read it for you, right? There are three distinct ingredients that were praised among Roku's foundations as a successful ad platform: a coveted audience, right? Reach at scale, and proprietary data to drive results for marketers. That's the important part. Combined, these have created a data-rich environment, helping Roku establish a significant gap between itself and its rivals, streaming 70% more ad-supported hours than the next nearest streaming platform in June of 2019, right? That's what's going on here. Roku is dominating the video ad space for programmatic TV. If we go back and we look at ARK's position in Roku, that's why it's one of its biggest positions, because it sits at the center of the convergence. It's an artificial intelligence company that's just using AI to match streamers to people who are streaming to the ads that they're watching without friction, right? That's the special thing about Roku. So if you have any questions about Roku, I'll read the comments now, but go look at their investor relations report, go do research on Roku today, because ARK bought Roku on this dip. That's what I'm telling you, right? The other company we'll talk about, looking at tons of comments about ARK in general, I'll answer them at the end of this session. The other company I want to talk about is Baidu. There's a lot of stuff going on with Baidu. First of all, Baidu fell by 11% yesterday. 11, right? So if we go and we just literally look at Baidu stock, right? There's a huge sharp dip going on, right? It was sitting at $300 yesterday. It's at $232 today, right? It's going to open much, much, much lower than it did last week, right? 25% down. So what is Baidu? Baidu is basically China's Google. That's definitely oversimplifying it, but that's like the basics. And when I say Google, I mean Google. They offer a whole bunch of services ranging from, I wish I could make this bigger, huh? Can I make this bigger? I sure can. Baidu focuses a lot on the same things as Google in China, right? So Google is currently, I believe, still banned in China. Yep, so this is correct. Baidu is like Chinese Google, but I don't just mean the search, right? They offer a wide variety of web services that are backed by artificial intelligence, just like Google does. Maps, contacts, think about all the review systems and, Google Shopping, all of the things that Google is doing here and around the world. Baidu is doing in a more targeted way for mainland China, right? So the other thing that Baidu has that's a leg up on Google is they understand the Chinese culture extremely well, and they're catering that type of service at scale to China, which has over 1 billion people on it, right? So there's a big incentive for Chinese people to use Baidu, right? It's culturally, integrated into their society. So they're also working on autonomy. Just like Google has Waymo, Baidu has partnered with companies for electric vehicles and autonomous electric vehicles. Again, two of ARK Invest's biggest big ideas, right? Autonomous mobility and electric vehicles. So Baidu isn't just some stock that ARK Invest likes because it's techie and cool. It fits into that bigger vision. And I think that's always important to call out. Artificial intelligence, electric vehicles, and autonomy, right? Like that's what's going on with Baidu. Baidu has seen strong quarters at the last 4 market quarters. So this dip is driven by market conditions, fear around holding Chinese stocks in general from everything that happened with, the delisting scare and current American and Chinese relations. This is not a result. This dip isn't a result of Baidu's performance as far as I've been able to tell, right? So in February, Baidu reported earnings and revenues, right? Top line revenues came in at just below their forecast, right? But was still up 12% year over year. Baidu, among Baidu's bulls, a 5-star analyst writes, Baidu is making great strides in monetizing new AI initiatives, including smart transportation, intelligent driving, right? We believe that Baidu is well positioned to grow into a meaningfully expanded total addressable market, capitalizing on growth opportunities in cloud, smart transportation, intelligent driving, and AI. That's what I mean when I say Baidu is like Google, right? So think Waymo. Think all of the ways that it enhances navigation, right? Baidu also owns IQ. I'm going to botch this. I apologize. ARK, right? Which is basically Google's YouTube, right? It's the video platform associated with Baidu and search and putting ads in front of video content, right? So just like YouTube makes money off of ads primarily. Sorry, let me get back to the thing I was actually talking about. Just like Baidu makes money, just like YouTube makes money off of ads, right? Serving ads on the internet and in front of video content on YouTube. Baidu does the same thing with ARK, which I'm always going to have trouble saying. They're a programmatic ad display company, right? This is how Baidu makes money, by serving targeted ads in front of web content, both articles and video, right? And just like Google, they're dipping their toes into artificial intelligence. ARK is a separate stock now, right? It's a separate entity that Baidu has a big stake in. But I believe it was a spin-off company, right, from Baidu. So I did all this reading last night and today once I got into ARK's data. So I'm still learning a lot about Baidu, right? We don't use Baidu here, we use Google. And there have been talks, just like you see that with Baidu, there have been talks about Google and YouTube separating, just because of antitrust and Congress things. Like Google has a huge hold on searching internet data. I'm not so sure there's a real case for antitrust laws on Google. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is you can see the parallels between Baidu and ARK and Google and YouTube, right? Why are they selling Google but buying Baidu? This is a great question, because Google is one of ARK Invest's big, stable cash positions, has nothing bad about Google. They use it as cash. And Baidu is one of their largest conviction growth positions that they think will have an outsized benefit in the future, right? Like financial growth in the future, right? So they just are two different stocks to ARK Invest, even though they share the same operating space in the world, right? And we're going to be seeing that a lot. Who is the current dominant, stable player in the current version of the market? That's probably a cash position. What is going to be the next generation of that thing, and what company is going to dominate tomorrow's version of that thing, whether it's in a new market like China and going to Google, like China's version of Google, I mean, or how are they going to transform the market entirely? That's like genomics versus healthcare today, right? And then who is the outsized winner in tomorrow's market? And those are ARK Invest's top positions. So let me go bring up the charts again, and then we can answer some final questions, and then we'll be ready for market open. Share screen. So like I was saying, Roku and Baidu are sitting in the top, 4, 5, 6, 4, and 7th top positions, right? And we can see Google all the way at the bottom right now. And that's, again, because of the question that's still on the screen here, right? So Google is dominating that market today. They exist in a dominant market. Baidu is currently working on expanding their total addressable market, right? By doing the same things in a more emerging market, i.e. China, right? So maybe so let me read some questions here. The indicator with NR of stocks won't really pick up. I don't know what NR of stocks means. When ARK thinks their holds will turn into dips. So if you can clarify this question, I'll do a good job answering it. What do you think about Virgin Galactic? I don't mean the fuss about the stock price, but their products stay in 5 to 10 years, and the fact that they're so behind SpaceX, right? So Virgin Galactic is not behind SpaceX because Virgin Galactic doesn't compete with SpaceX. They're doing two fundamentally different things. They're just both space companies. So Virgin Galactic is focused on unlocking hypersonic point-to-point travel. SpaceX is working on reusable, rockets for manned and unmanned actual space missions. Virgin Galactic is focused on space tourism today as a way to raise capital and raise awareness in space. And it's a nice, cool thing to do when you have $250,000 for a ticket. But their end goal is terrestrial, so Earth to Earth, hypersonic point-to-point travel, right? That's not SpaceX's goal. So you can hold both of those companies and feel confident that you have two companies in space exploration that are doing very different things. Baidu also makes a ton of cash, but isn't valued very high. 80 billion market cap, 40 billion revenue. Yeah, exactly. That Baidu is like Google in terms of the things that it does, not in terms of how it's valued and the market it's operating in, right? Banking apps today in America versus banking apps in China work two different ways because Chinese people in China are more likely to be unbanked, right? So the solution just has to be different there because the actual market landscape is different there. You know what I mean? It's the same thing with Baidu and Google. They look like they do the same things. Like there's a lot of apples to apples comparisons you can make, but the people they're serving are very different, right? Like very different cultures, very different markets, very different economic status, right? And as a result, the way you're serving those people has a much more dramatic effect on, ARK is saying the Chinese market, right? Like we're all used to Google, and Baidu is doing all these crazy things now for China, right? In a world where Google is banned. I'll take a couple more questions here. The chat is just flying by, and then I will let you go for market open. We can take a look at the data again real quick and just wrap up on that note if we think it's useful. So the two big outliers again that we talked about today, Roku and its powerful streaming advertising. Sorry, let me do this. Roku with its powerful streaming content and advertising matching to consumers, right? That's the reason Roku retains a top spot in ARK Invest. Baidu doing the same things as Google, but overseas in a market that's constantly expanding. So a big total addressable market expansion for Baidu while it's doing things aggressively in China, right? The same things that Google is doing here. Baidu is interesting because it dropped over 10% yesterday. Roku is interesting because it had a big dip that ARK bought yesterday. The biggest positions it sold to do that, right? Let's look at by percent shares sold. Actually, we can even look at by percent dollars sold. But, for now, they sold half of their stake in Google, GOOGL, over 90% of their stake in Lightspeed, LSPD, right? And we can, let's just do this to drive the point home even further. Facebook, they sold 16% of their shares. Netflix, 15% of their shares. Taiwan Semiconductor, over 10% of their shares. And then PayPal, almost 7% of their shares. None of the companies I just listed are bad stocks. They're just big, stable giants in their industry that ARK is treating like cash, right? I'll answer one more question just because the question that flew by me in the chat is really interesting. Why does good news not guarantee a stock go up? Is the price controlled by a person? No, it's controlled by people disagreeing on, is that news good or bad, right? How good is that news versus expectations? So the biggest tip I'll give you for the market is it has nothing to do with what is going on. And it has everything to do with how that thing that's going on measures versus expectations, right? So the market doesn't move by stuff. It moves by change in stuff, right? It's not bullishness that drives the market. It's change in bullishness. If people are more bullish today than yesterday, prices go up. If people are less bullish today than yesterday, they can still be really bullish, but if they're less bullish, prices are going down, right? So measuring change is what we're trying to do here. Change in price, change in conviction, because change is fundamental to market movements, right? Changes in stock price, changes in conviction, right? This series, The Market Open, is about measuring change, right? And that change has an impact on our overall vision. If it turns out that Roku was bad at solving its problem, which we know it's not, that should affect the way we think about that problem, right? The way the way Roku matches people, content, and advertising is smart. And that's shown by the fact that they're winning in their market. I'm using market data, very low-lying data, to drive my vision, the highest point of that framework that we looked at yesterday, right? But if it turns out Roku was wrong, we would see that in the data and we'd be like, oh, that's not the right way to match people, content, and ads. What other companies are doing that, right? So focus on change. Go look at sentiment reports, right? AAII.com/sentiment survey, and look at the change in bullishness week over week. That's going to be a good indicator on whether the market went up or down. I promise you. I've been looking at that every week since I started investing, and that's never been a waste of my time. I think that's good. We did a 30-minute live stream today. We looked at some data. We talked about ARK's biggest buys and sells. We talked about some market mechanics. So I'm going to end it there, and I will see you tomorrow. If you want to have some questions prepared for these daily live streams, I'm happy to answer them. Make sure that they're like, I can read them all. I can read them out loud. They make sense start to finish, and I will do my best to answer those questions. So this is ticker symbol U. My name is Alex, reminding you that the best investment you can make is in you.